Okay, we're still on. We just finished up on Rule 4, where we were talking about the Om and the Om, and how the Om is sounded by the soul and the personality, and we sounded a silent Om and then a vocal Om, and we might do that later if we have time. And then the DK says students need to assess their readiness to work and ask, do you feel you've reached the stage where you can, number one, he says, eliminate meditation form as you now have it, enter with relative facility into the state of contemplation, and third, recognize the vibration of your own soul. It's interesting that he says, are you willing to eliminate meditation form as you now have it? He doesn't say what would be wrong with the meditation form that students may now have. I think what he's saying is that, are you willing to change the ways you're doing things in order to have a more firm soul contact? And then he kind of gives a hint. He says, to change your meditation, to enter into a state of contemplation. Now, a lot of people, when they meditate, just meditate, let their minds go blank. And I think that's what he's probably referring to, because in a state of contemplation, your mind isn't blank. Your mind has got stuff pouring through it. And that's what I'm concentrating on with the latest on the Seeker's Guide to Soul Contact. I'm giving out a seed thought every day and having people contemplate that. And because contemplation is in some ways the highest form of meditation, though forms where you visualize is important, like we were just talking about visualizing the master in the heart. One of the things we do as a group quite often is visualize a master in the center of the group, which I like better than visualizing the master in the heart. And so visualizing a master is good, because when you get impressions from the master, it's usually impressions from your own soul. Your own soul is in contact with higher lives, such as the Christ and the masters, and the linked to the one God. So you, by linking with your own soul and entering into a state of contemplation, you can have a very fruitful meditation. And you not only meditate when you're, sit back and close your eyes and visualize, but with contemplation, you can do that anytime. With set forms of meditation, you have to go in a darkened room or something where you complete privacy and no one's going to bother you, and visualize things and enter into a state of peace. In contemplation, you can do that in a noisy situation. You can be on a bus. There can be a lot of noise around you, but you can still enter into a state of contemplation no matter where you are or what circumstance. Matter of fact, Tibetan talks about this with the Western world. He says in the Eastern world, they're used to regular forms of meditation. But in the Western world, we have so much noise around us. Matter of fact, he points out how everything's getting a lot noisier all the time. And he says because the Western world has so much distraction, it's a form of meditation for them to be able to put out of their mind all the distractions around them and enter into a state of contemplation. For instance, he says a businessman contemplating how to make his business successful is a form of meditation in the Western world. And that's unique to itself compared to like the Eastern world. So he points out there's a lot of difference between the approaches to the West and the East. Matter of fact, he's in an Oriental body, and he says he's chosen, one of the reasons he chose an Oriental body was because Oriental bodies are more geared to the inner work. And because he does a lot of the inner work, he is happy with having an Oriental body. But he says in the Western world, our bodies are more geared for the outer work. And so if you want to do focus more on the outer work, you incarnated in probably a Western type of body, a Caucasian or one of the minorities here in the Western world. So he's pointed out that several times that there's quite a bit of difference in the approach, but the results are very similar in the fact that both learn to focus. In the Western world, he says, we learn to focus despite the noise and the distractions that we have around us. We have a lot more distractions than like people in India and some of the Asian cultures for meditation. And it's creates certain advantages for us to overcome those distractions and be able to focus. And in the among the Orientals, it's an advantage of them to not have so many distractions and to be able to focus on the inner world. And thus, they as a whole find it easier to access the inner workings of the mind, and we find it easier to access the outer workings. But each of us need to learn from each other and not just focus on one avenue, but we eventually need to master all avenues. Okay, he asks this question. Does a sacred word mean anything to you? And could you formulate clearly the reason you sound it? What's the purpose of sounding the sacred word? Why do we do that? Oh, Curtis, good to see you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Have you got a video on this today?
Yeah, I got a video on. Am I coming through?
Your sound is. I don't see your video, though.
I can see him. He's kind of dark, though.
It's kind of dark. I can see him, but it's kind of dark.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have much light behind me. It's all coming from within. I'm being more Oriental today.
Well, Curtis, in our family group, would you like to do an interview on the computer?
When? Right now?
No, not right now. Later on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure,
I'll talk to you about that.
All right.
Okay. Anyway, getting back to the question.
Does it have something to do, maybe, JJ, with the vibration? Whenever you're saying the sacred word, you're vibrating this sense of being to the nomad or beyond.
Yeah, that's a good part of it. Any other thoughts on why we sound the sacred word and why we sound it? The reason?
The awe.
We just sound it for the heck of it, or why do we go om?
Well, om is a clearing sound. Oh, like, ho. It kind of clears the space. It opens the door for to manifest whatever you can envision. That's how I look at a om. It just clears the space.
That's a real good point, Curtis. Any other thoughts?
To me, the sound om creates form, all forms.
Okay.
Because it's all, and then it's it's like it's making a vortex, a torus, a toroid shape.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, there's certain sounds that do different things. Now you notice the om starts with O. The hard sounds in our language are destroying sounds. So what does the O in the Om destroy? Now, when something happens that's really bad, what do you say? Oh, no. Okay, you sound these two O sounds right together. Oh, no. Okay.
Oh no.
Or
And
uh-oh.
those are the sounds, those are the beginning sounds of the Om. Okay. So what does that mean? What does that hard sound mean? What it means is that it's a destroying sound. So the O is a powerful destroying sound. What does the Om destroy?
Illusion.
No?
That which hinders.
Very close, very close. Any other comment?
Negative energy of some kind?
Very good, Joe. That's right. The Om destroys negativity. Okay. And what do you need destroyed before you can enter into a deep state of meditation? You need the negativity destroyed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's sound it right now. We're going to sound the Om right now and just feel how it seems to destroy anything negative that's happened during the past week. Now, Cindy's had an accident, and she's it'd be probably really good for her to sound the Om because it destroys all that negativity that's been circulating around her because of her accident. And so let's sound it right now. Oh, my voice is kind of cracking.
You gotta do an Om to start your own.
Yeah, right. Om, as you're sounding it, feel the negativity just evaporating.
Om.
Okay, and is a consummating sound. When you sound the it's because, and the is a consummating sound on the and the Om. So it's a consummating sound on both of them. It's a sound that's finalizing, sealing up what you've done. Okay, so
JJ, what's the difference?
Yeah.
What's the difference between Om and
Okay, the Om is
what do they signify?
The Om is a destroying sound. The Om is the building sound. The Om is the one that takes us from matter to spirit, and the Om is the one that takes us from spirit to matter. And notice the Om has the soft sound. Instead of A. Instead of A, it's ah. Okay, the Om instead of the soft sound, it's a hard O. Okay. Now, what were you saying, Jill?
Ruth typed something in chat. Om is for the age of Aquarius.
Okay. Well, they both are kind of, because we'll use both words for different things during the age of Aquarius.
Aquarius.
Yeah, Aquarius.
A for Aquarius.
That's good, Curtis. Good thought. Okay, so the Om, the sounds of the Om and the Om are certainly worth a lot of reflection. Okay, any more comment on that before we move ahead?
Well, when I say the it's like it distills the energy, and I can feel whatever it is I'm trying to create or manifest or idealize descending into form.
Right, and that's what you need to do with the Om, is use that for creation. And like we've done several times as a group, use it to like aha, and that's a feeling you have, or when you get an idea that's going to descend into reality. What do you say? You say aha, and that's the first part of the aum, is where you get the idea. You get the idea that's going to manifest, and you say aha. They even call the moment of inspiration the what moment?
Aha moment.
Aha
The
moment.
aha moment. It could be called the moment, AUM moment.
My last name begins with
So-
AU, and in America it's pronounced Audette, but in France, where we're originally from, it's pronounced Odette.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
So it's
Yeah, those
been some-
French. I took a little French in high school, and I still can't pronounce all those French words.
We.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
when,
Oh, matter of fact, Curtis
uh,
learned French. You learned French, didn't you, Curtis?
yeah, I did. I
Yeah.
served a mission in France, Switzerland.
Can you remember any of it?
Some of it. Un peu.
Well, say something.
Well,
Put you on the spot.
c'est un bon temps avec tout le monde ce soir.
Okay. Well, you got
Especially sermon étudiant les traités de magique what's white blanc, the magic blanc,
Well, you got me fooled anyway, so
you know.
sounds good to me.
I understood him.
Ah
Yeah.
bon.
Comment allez-vous?
Como- well, and the oo has a property all of its own. When you see something that you're creating, you go ooh, hey, is past the it's into the ooh stage.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're saying ooh, ooh. And then I think you told me one time, Joe, and it's like food when you taste it. You know, the final consummation is mmm.
Yeah, right.
So the end of creation is mmm. Aha.
Right. Right.
I'm
That's
always-
the final consummation of both of them.
I was really delighted when I discovered that in texting, you know, like on a cell phone texting, an expression of exclamation would be OMG,
Oh,
Which-
yeah?
which is like G is the sound that you add for sweetness, like sugar.
Yeah.
It's the sticky in the throat that sugar has, and so OMG would be like a sweet ohm.
Well, it's interesting when you study the English language how words that sound similar have kind of corresponding meanings.
Like
What-
atoms and atoms.
Yeah, and words with hard O's have similar meanings. Words with ah have similar meanings. E, many of them have similar meanings, and so on. So it's interesting to correspond those words. Okay, the third thing he says students need to assess, he says, is, are you anxious to proceed in this work because your personality aspires, or because your soul is beginning to consciously contact you and you're sensing purpose from your higher self? So he points out again and again the importance of motive and the importance of all of us disciples and aspirants asking ourselves, well, why am I doing this? Why do I want to be involved in a work? Is it so I can show everybody how great I am? Or is it so I can maybe just be of some type of service? And when you think of it, all of us want to be of some service, don't we? Because if you couldn't be of some service or some use in the world, it would be kind of depressing, wouldn't it, when you think about it? So we all want to be of some service, and the illusionary part of that is if that service provides a lot of glamour and praise, then the praise begins to overtake the purpose of service, so that the person begins to work for his own satisfaction rather than service itself. But unless the person puts attention on service for service sake, for helping others, he's not going to be very satisfied. He'll wind up getting depressed. The fastest way out of depression is to make yourself useful to other people. If you're useful to other people and other people are saying, hey man, you really helped me a lot, how can you be depressed if somebody comes to you and tells you that? It's almost impossible. If somebody comes to you and says, man, you've really been a big benefit to me, you've really helped me out a lot, you have people coming to you and telling you that, you will never be depressed. It will do something to your brain chemistry. Even if your brain chemistry is out of order, it will help your brain chemistry. If the person just concentrates on service for service sake to help make the world a better place.
I've been telling people that the third rule of life is to become a useful member of some group somewhere.
Yeah. Make yourself useful is probably the fastest way to say that, right?
The first three rules: have fun, learn something, and become a useful member of a group. If you're doing that, that's living life. If you're not having fun, you're not playing by the rules.
Well, plus if you're doing something to be of service and value to friends, family, loved ones, associates, you will have fun. It will be a fun thing to do. You'll find the people that are really out there just with a sour attitude, they don't really have many people praising them as being helpful for them. But so making ourselves useful, that's a really important one. Now the Tibetan continues here, and he takes a rare opportunity to talk about himself. And he, at this point, when he gave out this rule, he was anonymous and didn't say who he was, and he didn't plan on revealing who he was. And he says in this portion of the book that that it wasn't expected for anyone to know who he was. And the reason for this, he says, it's really not important. He says the important thing is he says it's not important if I'm a master or just some guy on the street or whatever. He says what's important is the words I give out. He says you can read the words that I write and judge me from them. And I think that's really an important point, is that if we didn't know that he was a master, his words are so potent and so deep, you know that the guy is pretty high up there somewhere. But as it was, L.S.A. Bailey kind of slipped it out by accident, and then somebody repeated it, and his name got out that he was the master Dwell Cool. And so Curtis and I joke to each other. We think it's funny. His last name is Cool.
It's cool.
Which sounds like COOL, Mr. Cool.
Yeah. Joe Cool, Joel Cool.
So he is kind of a cool guy when you think about it. And speaking of words, kind of being harmonious like that, that's interesting that his last name is Cool. But
I think he's got a good sense of humor.
Yeah, he's kind of got a subtle sense of humor, but I like it.
Sense of humor.
I like it when he reveals his lighter side. But anyway, he says the reason his name wasn't initially given out was that the important thing is the message, not the messenger. And he makes this statement. He says, is truth not of equal value if enunciated by an aspirant, a disciple, a master or even the Christ? Yeah, even if you go back to the Bible, you find some quotes from Satan himself in the Bible. He says some things that are actually true. So it doesn't matter if the quote comes from a devil, a Christ, a God, an angel. If it's
Or
true,
the
it's
mouth
true.
of babes.
Yeah, if it's true, it's true. And so no matter how bad the person is, even Hitler said a number of things that were true. So no matter who's speaking, the important thing is to sift through our own souls and filter out the truth from error within ourselves. If it strikes us as true, it doesn't matter who says it, then if it's true, it's true.
I think in the Bible even says somewhere, I'm paraphrasing, of course, that even the devil can be your friend sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, the devil can appear as angel of light, it says.
Well, no, it said basically that, he's somebody you can do business with. Don't discount him. You can there's ways that you can utilize. Even have an office in judiciary systems called the Devil's Advocate, the DA.
Yeah, even when it talked in the book of Job, it talks about the sons of God coming before God, and the Satan was among them. So Satan had an audience with God himself, and he argued with him, saying that, this Job character, I can break him. And God says, no, I don't think you can. So they had a bet going on. So it sounded like by the book of Job, it sounded like their relationship wasn't that.
I've always got the impression that God and the devil were like golf buddies or something. They,
That's one way to look at it.
Just make sure he doesn't lead you carefully down to hell.
Yeah, right. Well, Rick, I think you got a new vision in my mind. Devil and God being golf buddies. Golf buddies. That's something I never.
Devil in a blue dress.
Okay, he says, one lesson all aspirants need to learn, and to learn early, is a concentration on the personality of the teacher, hoping for personal contact with him and constant visioning of that condition called accepted chelaship serves to postpone that contact and delay that acceptance. There's a scripture that talks about making our calling and election sure. And among my Mormon friends, a lot of them, their main goal is to be able to see Jesus or see God or see Joseph Smith or something like that. And they think this is making their calling and election sure. And a lot of them claim to see Jesus, and a lot of them, the funny thing is, a lot of them claim to see Jesus don't come away with any enlightenment that I can see. He didn't really tell them anything. I guess I just saw a glimpse of him or something. But anyway, he says that he points out that the thing aspirants need to learn is not to make it your main goal to see a master or to see Jesus or to have contact with God, but constantly envisioning that condition postpones the contact. The main thing to do is to just make yourself of service. Make yourself of service, and then he says, when that contact does come, it'll come in an hour you're not expecting it. And that's what Jesus says, that we all need to be awake and aware, because ye know not that hour or that time when your master will come. And so he says the best thing to do is just proceed along, and in the day that you're not expecting it, you will have some type of contact if the contact is pertinent. If you're doing a good job and you don't maybe even need the contact, you may not have it even in this life, but you'll have some type of contact. You'll have contact with, you'll have some type of inner contact. And when we go to sleep, all of us have our minds return to the soul, and we have contact in the higher world. But then when you wake up, you don't remember it. So we have a lot of contact, and a lot more than we think. And oftentimes when you wake up from a dream or from a sleep, you will have an impression of some kind. And so if you wake up from sleep with an impression, it's quite possible your soul give you something that you're supposed to act upon. I had an interesting dream last night. I dreamed that I was told that there was a way to treat water. I wasn't told how to do it. I kind of got the impression it was some electrical stimulation of process of some type to turn water into fuel. So water could be just as potent as gasoline if it was treated in the right way. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool, but I have no idea how to proceed with that. So,
well, why don't you heat it and it'll make steam, and that'll move all kinds of objects.
yeah. Well, we do know how to release hydrogen from water, but that wasn't the impression that I got either. And I had the impression there's something we can do to water to alter it somehow to make it into a fuel. So I don't know if that was just a dream or what, but
no, they actually did that in ancient scriptures. They talk about that kind of making fire from water.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there is a process. It's kind of like solar cells type things. It can be done, yeah, and it's a fire that burns without carbonizing, right? It's a very pure fire and very hot.
That's what I got from my dream, something like that. I was told in there, and it was a kind of an unusual thing to come up with. But and I had a feeling that there's some type of electrical stimulation that can make that happen, but I have no idea how to proceed with it.
You can just you put the two wires off of a battery into a glass of water, and it'll produce bubbles on one side of hydrogen and bubbles on the other side of oxygen. And you take those two gases and collect them and light them, and they produce this really pure flame.
Yeah, I know that. I know that can happen. I think this was something different, though. I think it was something. Now, yeah, they're working working on that process now of creating hydrogen from water and then running.
Well, they just discovered. They just discovered something about when micro bubbles pop, they emit light. So there's light involved in the process.
Well, you ought to think of that this process, Rick, because your mind kind of goes that direction a lot.
Yeah, I'm always trying to figure that one out. You know, I've been trying to figure out the physical, or what do you call it, the geometrical relationship of members of a molecule. And I think I'm onto something, and I'm going to keep pursuing it because there's something there that's trying to come through.
Okay, sounds good. Now, in the what's called the calling and election, which is kind of what Tibetan is referencing, everybody wanting to have, here's what Peter said about it in 2 Peter 1:4-10. Whereby you are given unto us exceedingly great and precious promises, that by these you might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. And besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. For if these things be in you and abound, they make you that you shall be neither barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. But he that lacketh these things is blind and cannot see afar off, and hath forgotten that he was purged from his old sins. Wherefore, the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. For if you do these things, you shall never fall. So here Peter tells us basically just be a really good and decent person, be full of love and service and diligence and kindness, brotherly love. And he says this will lead to making your calling and election sure. He doesn't say anything in there about getting a glimpse of Jesus. And most people that do claim to see Jesus merely see a projection of a thought form. So the number of people that say they've seen Jesus is probably very small compared to the ones that see some type of thought form instead. Because there's a powerful thought form of Jesus out there that many people see. And the Tibetan says there's even a thought form of him wandering around. The people, even in his day, when he was still talking to L.S.A. Bailey, he said there was a thought form of him out there that people were picking up and thinking they were talking to him when they weren't talking to him at all. So there's a lot of deception, and a lot of the deception is because of our desires that it's given to us according to our desires. If we desire something bad enough, it will happen. It's like these people that identify with the crucifixion of Jesus have the wounds in their hands and feet start just showing up. Like Jesus, what's that called? Can't remember the name of it.
Stigmata.
Stigmata. That's the word I was looking for. The stigmata. And that's that happens not so much because of any great miracle. It happens because of the power of their mind creates a strong thought form. They identify so much with their vision of what Jesus is and him crucified that they start having these wounds appear in their hands and their feet, just like he had. Okay, what's a correct attitude? One of the best descriptions of the correct attitude was something I wrote when I felt very close to the Spirit myself, and I'm going to read it here. If you follow the highest you know, there will come a time when you will be visited by a presence, either visible or invisible. It will come at a time that you least expect it, and a time when perhaps you will feel least prepared spiritually, but it will come. To dream and wish for the experience will only delay the happening. But if you take the highest you know and go forward in the vineyard of the Master and serve with no end in sight, in season and out of season, in good times and in bad, if you serve with love in the dark of night, with the same strength as in the light of day, if you continue with loving service through the fiery darts of hate, malice, and betrayal, and above all, if it appears that even your master and your God seem to completely ignore you as if you did not exist, through all this, you will continue to serve with the highest you know. You continue even if God himself seems to be your enemy, putting every obstacle possible in your path and laughing at you as you stumble and fall. You rise up and continue. The time comes that it will not seem to matter to you anymore if friends, God, or the masters approve of you or not. It matters not if you are some great chosen one, or looked upon by the masters as the least and most needy of the brethren. You will now serve for the sake of selfless love alone, because the need is out there and you sense the need. When this stage is reached in your being, one of the great ones will take notice and speak. Behold the servant. He has become as one of us. Let us invite him into the circle of higher friendship, brotherhood, and service. But even here, the invitation comes not as you expected. All your expectations are shattered and soon replaced by newer ones, and the groping in the dark is replaced by walking in the path with vision. The reward for your selfless service is sight, and as you see the path ahead, your heart is filled with joy, for that which you see is not that which you imagined, but more than you imagined.
That's
Anyway,
pretty good, Joe.
Thanks, Curtis.
You wrote that?
Yeah. I wrote that a number of years ago, and I really felt the spirit when I did write it. And
You sure did.
but that's what you got to do. You got to proceed no matter what. And sometimes it'll even appear that God is your enemy. But it doesn't matter what obstacle is in front of you. The important point is just to move ahead, do your job, follow the highest you know, and the time will come that you'll get some type of acknowledgement that you have chosen correctly.
JJ,
Those are to consider the
in a way, obstacles can propel you forward even more.
Right. We need some obstacles to
Exactly.
overcome.
They're learning experiences.
I was on this other site the other day, and they says, should we thank the Lord for all of our trials? And I made a post there. I says, I thank God for the space between the trials.
Yeah.
Well, the trial of your faith.
Yeah.
I was going to say that what the quote, the Peter quote, and the trend of the conversation of cultivating virtues within yourself. Our triad is kind of working on trying to come up with a presentation, that based on sort of a theme of it would be kind of like one of those yellow books, getting into heaven for dummies.
Yeah. That'd be a good book for you to write there, Rick.
Well, we've got
Spiritual Path for Dummies or whatever.
We've got writers, we've got editors, we've got it covered. We just have to kind of like narrow down a topic a little.
Yeah. Yeah. DK says these are days, therefore, wherein quietness and confidence must be your strength, and wherein the only safeguard lies in a close searching of all underlying motives. He points this out. He stresses motive quite often. He says that each of us need to examine our motive. Why are we doing what we're doing? Is our motive pure? And this is the most important thing above, being a Mr. Nice Guy and kind and loving your neighbor and all this stuff that everybody knows they're supposed to do. But he points out that the ultimate quality a disciple must have is pure motive. I guess another way to say that is to be pure in heart. He says the inner watchers look for motive and the ability to serve. The outer world conflicts and produces the result of forcing the seeker to look within for answers. He points out that the outer world has a lot of conflict going on. I think we probably have more conflict now than we've had any time since the Civil War. There was a lot of conflict during the Civil War, and we have a similar time now. We're kind of having a civil war on the astral plane. Thank God it isn't on the physical like last time. Hopefully it doesn't go to that. But he says this this conflict like we have now, it forces people to reflect back on their own soul. We see arguments on both sides of the political system, and this causes many people to think, well, which side is right? And it forces them to reflect back and think, well, I have to look within because nobody's out there to tell me who's right. Who's right, Hillary Clinton or Trump or Republicans or Democrats. Who knows who's right? So we're forced, he says, to go reflect back on our own souls. So he says, even though the conflict is very disturbing, he says it's good for us because it forces us to think. And that's kind of interesting way to look at it.
Well, it forced Joseph Smith to his knees.
Oh, yeah.
Which church was right, which Methodist, Baptist, Protestant, and he just kind of threw up his arms and said, "Well, I've got to go ask my soul, ask God, and get the greatest light I can,
Yeah.
and look what happened to him."
That's a good point. There was a big conflict. Everybody was saying my church is right, and he didn't know, so he went out and got a vision on it.
I think the key there was humility. Humility. He didn't presuppose anything. He didn't claim to know. He just didn't know. He was in a total state of not know. And sometimes that's where the greatest beginnings take place.
Yeah, he says, that's a good point, Curtis. It says several things become apparent to the thoughtful student. He says the first point he makes again is that idealism and sensing of the plan for humanity have a close relationship. Idealism is like the thought that precedes creation. Now we hear a lot of, he says a lot of, almost makes idealism sound negative because it associates it with the sixth ray of Pisces. But we have to remember that everything in Pisces wasn't bad. Jesus represented the ideal man. And so idealism has an important purpose. If we are too idealistic and just go demand perfection of everybody, that's one thing. That's the negative aspect. But to present before us the ideal, that is the positive thing. And he says higher idealism comes through the intuition, which will replace minds and emotions as the highest source. So high idealism, there's higher and lower idealism. The lower idealism is the fixed mind saying like Jesus is perfect and I can never be like him. The higher idealism is saying Jesus give an example of something that I can become. That would be the higher aspect of idealism. He says the ideal is projected into an individual or group mind which is colored with imperfection. Then it is picked up by the thinkers and then the astral and then materialized in imperfection, but still a stepping stone. So what the masters do, he says, they project into the minds of men an ideal, and we pick it up imperfectly, and then we stumble around and we try to implement it. And we have a lot of arguments. Republicans will try to implement it one way, Democrats another way, religious people one way, scientists another way. But a lot of people pick up different ideals sent from the higher worlds. And because of our imperfections, we don't all agree on how to implement it. But eventually something gets implemented, and it will not be perfect, but it will be a stepping stone to take us to humanity to the next step.
Well, Joe, don't you think that's the value of symbols? Symbols can point in a very precise way the direction that humanity is taking. Like Aquarius, you have the water bearer. You've got the Aquarian with the pitcher of water, which represents service, like you're talking about. And he lives in a world of abundance. He's got so much that he can share, which takes us back into the world of service, where he liberates himself through service. And through this symbol, if we see ourselves with this picture of whatever it is we have to offer, whether it's knowledge, talents, resources, money, whatever, we're constantly in a state of giving or sharing or serving each other. Isn't that really the true state of Aquarius?
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about symbols is when you go back to all the early languages, they all used symbols to write with. And even our letters of our alphabet were originally symbols of some kind. If you go to A, B, C, D, and all the letters of our alphabet are actually symbols. And the Chinese still use a lot of symbols in their language. And so it is an interesting thought on symbols there.
Yeah, I just gave a little mini lesson on hieroglyphics recently on the molecular group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says the masters give out the plan, but leave it up to the disciples and humanity as to how to work it out. He says the greatest difficulty will lie with the people accepting the plan. He says, and units fall into three groups. The first are those who can sense the plan and are commissioned to work it out. So you'll have the first group being the most sensitive. They'll pick up an aspect of the plan and say, hey, aha. They'll have an aha moment. And they'll say, this is a great idea. Let's get something going here. And this will often happen in a number of places. Like, for instance, let's consider spaceflight. We have Elon Musk and half a dozen other, Amazon and Bezos, and a number of people wanting to go into space all of a sudden. Private industry is wanting to go into space, and it's just not happened in one spot, but the inspiration to go into space is struck a number of billionaires that are independently trying to do it. Now, did that come from the masters? I won't say yes or no, but anyway, this particular idea came from, hit a number of different people. And this is what happens is the masters want something accomplished. They will send out an idea, and it will be picked up by sensitive individuals, and who will sense the plan and are commissioned to work it out. Then the second group of individuals will be those who can be used but are blind to the greater issues. In other words, let's say Elon Musk was really inspired in making SpaceX. Okay, bunch of people come and join his company because, boy, they really like that idea going into space. They don't understand the whole picture that Elon Musk has, but they like it, so they want to work for him. And the third group are those who sense nothing except those things which concern their own selfish interest. So in other words, there'll be other people helping Elon Musk go into space that are just there because it's a good job and pays good money, and they're kind of interested in the idea, but they don't have any sense of the plan, but they're still helping, in some way. So you have three groups of people involved that help to further the plan: those who know, those who sense, and those who just stumble along by accident and happen to be there at the right time. He says one of the primary conditions that a disciple has to cultivate in order to sense the plan and be used by the master is solitude. In solitude, the rose of the soul flourishes. In solitude, the divine self can speak. In solitude, the faculties and graces of the higher self can take root and blossom in the personality. In solitude also, the master can approach and impress upon the quiescent soul the knowledge that he seeks to impart, the lesson that must be learned, the method and the plan for work that the disciple must grasp. In solitude, the sound is heard. Interesting to think about. And solitude, as I said, for the Western world, sometimes you have to make your solitude despite the fact that you're in noisy situations and have a lot of people, a lot of things pulling at you, but you still have to find that solitude of mind. And in that solitude of mind, listen to the voice of the soul, listen to the inner promptings, and the time will come when you will get inner communications, inner direction. And okay, anybody get inner direction during times of solitude? Let's pick on somebody.
Many times.
Yeah, let's pick on somebody here. How about you, Cynthia? Do you get some inner direction during periods of solitude?
Oh, yes, JJ, I do. I've several times.
Okay.
Fortunately, I'm in a position where I can get solitude, as pretty much as I want.
Now you're not married, are you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you are. Oh, you are married? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So your husband doesn't interfere with your solitude at all?
No, he respects my meditation thing pretty much.
Oh, good. Yeah, my wife and I get along pretty good that way. She meditates every morning, and I know when the door is shut to one of her bedrooms that she's in there, and I don't disturb her at all.
You're a good husband.
And okay, the third thing that the disciple needs to be aware of is difficulties with which the masters must contend. After much thought, they select a disciple and transmit the plan. The person often fails because of personality problems. And this is a important point he points out is, the masters are not perfect. They don't, some of the things they undertake themselves don't always succeed. And one of the things that doesn't succeed is working with imperfect individuals like you and me. They'll pick somebody and the person seems to pick up an aspect of the plan and they think, well, great, maybe we can move forward here. And then the person screws up and becomes unworkable. And it says he becomes unworkable because of these, because he becomes unstable, he becomes oversatisfied with himself. Yeah, I contacted a master, or I'm a messenger or something like this. So he becomes oversatisfied that he's a great one, so he thinks.
Remember Bob Crossfield?
Yeah, right. Oversatisfied pride, despair. Now, despair is an interesting one. Oftentimes, the servant gets just depressed because he progresses along and just nothing seems to be happening. Self-depreciation, unstable emotions, and ill health. Ill health is definitely a distraction. Doesn't mean you're high or low on the scale, but it does provide a distraction, makes it hard for you to concentrate on serving others when you're concerned about your own survival. He says then if it doesn't work out, the master will have to wind up picking another less talented and less affected by all kinds of personality problems. Bottom line, he says, the servant must be in control of the physical, the emotional, and the mind. Okay, that's probably about all the time we've got. I'm going to make a mark here to continue at this point next week. Any comments or questions?
I have one, JJ. In regards to Om and would you suggest that it's never a good idea to or is there a place for using in meditation?
Right, you use a when you're trying to create. You use a Om when you try to clear away all negativity. That's why generally you say the Om before meditation, because you want to clear away all the negativity. So just the pure spiritual energy is there. But if you're meditating on creating something, then use the ah, oo, and then that's the time to use that word. Then, interestingly, the Tibetan says it doesn't say very much about using these two and the difference. But that's an interesting concept when you think about it. Okay, anything else?
Well, I was reading Treatise on White Magic, and he says that light is known by what is revealed. And I contemplated that, and it led me to understand the difference between light and dark and good and evil and that kind of thing. Evil never presents any new light. The dark side never presents new light. Only the light, only the higher aspect of spirit introduces new knowledge or new potential for growth. The dark side only tries to copy it and imitate it, but it never presents new knowledge or information. And what we have as a molecular group may not be new on the plane of the masters, but in the world in which we live, it is. So we have a tremendous opportunity, if not obligation or responsibility, to reveal as light bearers, Aquarian light bearers, these new concepts of not just group formation, but this whole potential to create new life through this molecular concept.
Yeah, you know, every once in a while I hear of some new channeler or person that claims to be a voice of the masters or God or Jesus or whatever, and so I usually check them out, and what I look for is any new light there, and sometimes I'll go through a whole book and there be not even one piece of light there, just repeating stuff that's already been out there, or maybe giving a bunch of data that no one can prove to be true or false yet. For instance, aliens are going to land on December 31st, 2020, and the White House is going to welcome them. I mean, stuff like that. There's no way to prove it until it happens with a prophecy. And then if they describe what's happening on another star system, there's no way to say whether or not that's true. So, but as far as revealing a new principle, a lot of these guys, they don't have one new piece of light that makes you go, that turns on the aha. That's good. I register that. And that's what you look for. When you look for people that claim to be a messenger of light or God or the masters, look for that light that turns on the aha moments within you that you just can't make up.
Well,
A creative mind can make up all kinds of data. Yeah.
I would think that if they claim to be a messenger of light, they probably aren't.
Yeah. Well, and that's why the way Tibetan started out. With Alice Bailey, he made no claims whatsoever.
Right.
And when Jesus showed up, did he make any claims? No, he just showed up, turned water into wine, and everybody says, wow, who is this guy?
Everybody partied.
What's going on here?
Party.
Bring somebody that's dead back to life, and they say, wow, is this the Christ, or who is this guy? And he never once says, hey, everybody listen to me. I'm Jesus. I'm reincarnated from great ones. You know, he didn't raise his hand and say, hey, I'm great. Listen to me, because I was Elijah or Moses in a past life. So you need to listen to me. And when you hear somebody say that, I was Moses in a past life, so listen to me because I'm a great one. You know that, you know.
Time to say goodbye.
that's 10 strokes and is against him right there.
When Curtis just mentioned the sun and needing planets to reflect it, called to mind a verse in a song that I written many years ago back in 77. And it says basically, a sun with no planets is but a falling star. For everything that gives, something must receive. Light does not exist where naught reflects it on. How may I express that you may reflect? How do I love you until I know, locked inside of me, my light will be?
That sounds really good, Rick. Yeah, matter of fact, in the blackness of space, there's all kinds of light, but there's nothing to reflect off of, so it's just black. You don't see it. You don't see it till it lands somewhere and reflects off of something.
So that's part of our job. As we become enlightened, our job is to turn around and light up somebody else.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that, just in closing, I know it's getting late, but that's what you did, Joe. When I was a searching member of the Mormon Church, I was looking for more and more and not finding it. And all of a sudden, you come along and start talking to me about, well, let's consider this, where the church might be slightly out of order, or maybe there is knowledge that out there that they're not introducing because they don't have access to it. Or what about these holy men that we know not of? And
Yeah.
you got me thinking in a way that the church never did, and at a moment that I was basically asking. And so, like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And in that moment, you showed up, and all I could do after you'd leave is go, aha, aha, or ooh, or that doctrine that tastes good, that feels good, that
Yeah.
wasn't getting fed in my Orthodox source of religion.
Yeah, before Curtis showed up, and he's my nephew, so he's not somebody I didn't know.
He's not paying me to say this.
Yeah.
No,
But Curtis was living down in, I think, Blackfoot or something before this, and I was studying all these things and come to a lot of additional light that was outside the Mormon Church. And I thought, boy, there's nobody I can share this with. And whenever we had friends over, I would ask them some test questions to see if maybe I could talk to them about additional things outside the Mormon Church without them being scared. And no one would pass these questions that I would ask. And finally, Curtis moved in town, and he give a speech in church, because oftentimes when somebody moves in, they have them give a speech in church. And I thought, wow, Curtis sounds like he's grown a lot spiritually. I'm going to invite him over and ask him these questions. And I invited him over.
I'm gonna light him up.
I asked him a couple leading questions, and he was the first person out of all the people I tested that was interested in actually learning something. And it was a real pleasure to find him and to tell him some of the things. And then wasn't too long before we both got thrown out of the church by the thought police. Not for anything we did wrong, but because our
thought police. Yeah. All those
anyway,
we had to break through. Well, that's what Rick said. Rick was saying that there has to be a reflection, and that's what another thing that made me think of you was what Rick was saying, is the sun has to radiate, but there has to be something negative that picks up the positive. And
I'll be done.
so, thanks, Rick, for bringing that up.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to become a good contemplator, I suggest get you a prescription strength a coffee cup here.
Okay, we're a little bit over time, so we'll just have a short concentration on the Om. We'll extend what we did last time. The Tibetan talks about sounding the Om in the sound of your personality. You have a note of your personality and a note of your soul. The note of your personality, when you sound the Om, the personality note will be the one that's most comfortable for you to sound it on. And that will, so you sound it out loud, and then after this, sound it silently. And visualize you being one with the soul and sounding your Om with you and your soul being one together. But visualize yourself saying it silently. And then the third step is to visualize you and your soul sounding the Om silently, and you sound it vocally, and you're both doing it together. So 3 steps. Sound the Om vocally in the note of your personality, sound the note with your soul silently, but it's not really silently because you're sounding it on the inner plane. And then third step, sound it on the inner plane and outer plane at the same time. Visualize yourself doing that. Okay. 1, 2, 3, sound the Om. Om, 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 om. Now visualize sounding it silently with your own soul. Visualize like a thread of light going up, connecting yourself with your soul, and you sound it together silently. Now sound the Om audibly and visualize your soul joining with you in silence. Is it a fire I see on top of Joshua's head?
I was just about to say, when I was doing it with my soul, I was getting this this like a tornado of fire.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I was in my vision, with my eyes closed.
Do you actually see something, JJ, or are you just joking around?
Well, you never know.
I don't know. That's why I was asking.
We're joking
There's
now,
the
but
reflection off
I'm sure the fire.
of Ken's glass. It looked like a light up there.
Yeah, right.
Did
You know, that's a spark fire among the group as a whole, as far as that goes.
You got a light on your head, Joe, but I think it's just a reflection.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay, well, it's been a good group and good energy, and glad everybody's here. Anybody got any parting words before we go?
Have a
Peace be
powerful
with
week.
everybody.
We'll see you next week. It'll be Sunday at 2 o'clock next week.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Okay.
Thank you.